So this video may contain potential huge spoilers for the ending, but I could be wrong, but just be forewarned. So there's been a lot of speculation that there will be a massive junkyard scene in Halloween Ends, but what exactly is the contents of the scene and what are they up to? And why would there be alternative cuts? Why did Jamie Lee Curtis say that this ending may really upset people and some people may be put off by it? I've gone down the route of doing several theory videos of them playing kind of with a screen playbook of doing movie within a movie, false memories, unreliable narration. I think that may still be there. But in terms of the junkyard scene, I think it's more simple as to why they may have changed things or why we may not be getting the full scene. So if you see the theatrical version, maybe they'll give a more extended version on Peacock, maybe not. But why was there a difference in the cuts and why is there a controversy? Well, I'll just boil it down to the essence as far as I know what will happen. Essentially, of course, Michael and her will face off. Lori does kill Michael. She succeeds, and she and Allison decide to drag Michael to the junkyard. We know this because the filmmakers have said that there will be a kind of Christine connection to this version of Michael and Halloween. And in Christine, the final battle is sort of at the junkyard where they destroy Christine, this kind of car that has been killing people and sort of absorbing their souls or whatever. So they're taking elements of the plot of Christine and putting them into Halloween Ends. There might not seem much for a controversy, but then when we hear what's going to go further, I think this is where they're not clear what they want to show us. So what happens is they drag Michael to the junkyard, they continue beating and killing him, and apparently he's basically dead. And this is, I think, where there's going to be a difference in the cuts. So in the original version, as far as I know, they do something which will be very controversial. But in terms of the alternate cut, I think what they did is they basically end a little bit more anticlimactic. They just brutalize and destroy Michael, but it's primarily Lori and Allison. I do think maybe other townspeople will show up. We see in the trailer that Hawkins and some people are rushing in. That could be what's happening, that they're basically finishing off Michael, but it's primarily her and Allison, and that's it. But in the original version, essentially they crucify Michael and they have his body, I guess, in a kind of Christ-like figure or kind of situation. And the local townspeople essentially line up and just keep beating and killing Michael. And they all take turns. They keep destroying him, destroying him, destroying him. And apparently it just goes on for a while. And I think they're sort of unclear where to go with this. So Michael is dead. They will kill him. Now, does this mean the shape is over? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe some other people will be inspired by Michael. So, quote, the Michael Myers legacy will continue. But Michael's body apparently will be destroyed. And they will try to use the junkyard as a way to destroy him. I guess the question is the crucifixion scene a little bit too much for people? Because, again, depending on how you feel, you might think, well, they're justified. They're not doing anything wrong. But other audience members might think, this is kind of making him look a little too sympathetic because, again, now that he's basically harmless, they could just let him die, but instead they're just beating him, beating him, beating him, and just trying to exact as much vengeance and pain out of the body. And maybe that just wouldn't sit well with some people. It would kind of run counter to the theme of mob violence they've had in the other films. So it's a little bit all over the place. It could also be a ratings issue that this is going to be rated R, but just the final parts with the junkyard scene are a little bit too much, and that would get them into an X or NC-17 rating. They don't want to do that. That happens typically with horror films. They will give a much more explicit cut and then trim it off. But apparently they could do that, but maintain a lot of this quote, crucifixion scene, but maybe just the whole religious imagery would not go down with some parts of the fandom. I'm sort of mixed that this is a good idea of how to end it. It does make sense that Michael has been kind of terrorizing the town. So the town is kind of taking this one final bit of vengeance and then resolving the issue, I guess. On the other hand, is this really staying true to the story? It seems like you're inserting an homage to John Carpenter. Again, for the most part, I have no issue with that. But that didn't really happen in Christine. That didn't have a kind of crucifixion scene because you're dealing with a car. So when you're doing it with a person and just destroying the person, beating them up with bats or spikes or whatever, that may have a different emotive feel to it. I mean, granted, if this is the real Michael, a huge amount of evil, so probably most people wouldn't care, but I think it may have just been a little too over the top, and so they're debating which version to give out to the public. I do hope we get the original scene because, again, I just want to see what the original vision was. Even if it's not a good scene, at least we know now what they planned originally, and that's what we're going to get. But again, some people may think this is going a little too far, and also they've done a bad thing with this whole trilogy of trying to mix violence and comedy. So maybe some moments came off sort of too comedic, and that was intentional, and I think that would be a mistake. But that's me. Some people have enjoyed the mixture of comedy and horror with this trilogy. So tell me what you think. If this is the spoiled ending of the junkyard scene and them crucifying Michael, is that a good idea? Should they go forward with it, or should they pull back and make it a shorter scene and trim out some of the more explicit gore? Thanks for listening.